So my next guest on the podcast is none other than John Bradford from DigiLocal. And for those that aren't aware, DigiLocal is our Geiston Mission Partner of the Year for 2024. So this conversation is really close to my heart in terms of something that we're really strongly supporting this year. Their mission is really closely aligned with our mission about improving diversity in the tech sector, about reaching out to people who are sometimes tech excluded, and about sort of just building enthusiasm and community in the local area around technology. So it's going to be a great conversation. I really hope you'll tune in and get as much from it as I'm sure I will. So John, thanks very much for joining us for this podcast. Really great to have you here, especially as we'll talk about later, because you've got special meaning to us this year as our mission partner of the year at Geiston for the foundation.
Well, so, thank you for the invitation.
Really pleased to have you. Thank you. So do you want to start off by just telling our listeners a little bit about you and about the history of DigiLocal and how it came to be?
Wow, how long have we got? Okay, so I'm John, Chief Exec of DigiLocal. We're a Bristol-based charity. Been going as an activity since 2015. Came out some work that a previous organisation, High Tech Bristol and Bath, did with the Local Enterprise Partnership around skills and education for the tech sector. And it was identified there that there was something lacking, particularly at the primary age, where marginalised young people were not being given similar opportunities to most of the people in the room who were engineers and scientists. And most of us found that we were introduced through a parent or friend of parent. My dad was an electronics technician. He had a great interest in this cool, weird stuff called computing that was just coming around. So we had things that we were disassembling at home. He brought stuff in, it was kind of cool. That's what sparked me off to be an engineer. A lot of young people don't have that opportunity, that advantage. So DigiLocal is really there to give those marginalised young people the opportunity to discover and develop their digital talents. And we do that by supporting community centres, youth groups, with boxes of laptops, so they've got kit that works, with project guides, they've got things to do on the laptops, and with volunteers from industry, such as Geiston, who can come in and deliver those clubs on a weekly basis, so 1 hour each week. And those young people then get to play around with Scratch and Python, develop their cool games and projects, realize that they can do this stuff, but also meet real engineers, developers, scientists, who, when they get stuck, when the young people get stuck or don't understand, can go through the kind of problem-solving process they use every day at work to show what it actually means to be a developer, consultant, engineer, whatever they happen to be in the real world. And then those young people will pick that up and say, okay, that's kind of interesting, I'd like to do that. Or maybe they'll say, okay, that's kind of interesting, I can do it, but I'm much more interested in this stuff over here. And for us, that's equally valid because those young people are then making an informed decision about what they want to do with their future.
Great, yeah. I mean, there's so much in terms of societal and individual benefit that kind of sits in that, which we'll unpack a bit later. But yeah, it's great to see that happening, and obviously we're very, very supportive of that kind of endeavour and believe really strongly that it's really important. So do you want to just give us a little summary of kind of last year for DigiLocal and kind of what your best wins were, your favourite moments, some of the great stuff that's happened?
Well, I always start with our best win is we're still here. That's as a small charity, that's fantastic. So I guess a couple of our big wins would be the NASA Space App Challenge, which happens in October. It's coming around again. This was the first year that we went fully in person after the whole COVID situation. So we were kindly hosted by UE. We had teams from the university, we had teams from industry, and we had our young people attending. So this is a global challenge for engineers and geeks to come up with cool stuff with space data. And in fact, one of our young people, the judging wasn't done by me, it was done by the university and folks from industry. One of our young teams beat out the industry team to be the Bristol Global nominee, which is kind of cool.
Amazing.
We've also had young people developing their own projects for the BAFTA Games Designer Challenge. And we had our second pilot of an internship program that I think we might chat about a bit later, to give young people more of a pathway into what's broadly termed the tech sector that they may not have access to through their other social backgrounds.
Fantastic. And yeah, obviously you're our mission partner of the year, and for us, that means that it's kind of you're our chosen outlets to help the local tech sector and tech community, particularly obviously with outreach kind of stuff and with trying to approach various different problems that our local tech community is facing. Do you want to tell us a little bit about kind of what that means to you to be working with Geiston and the sort of opportunities that might emerge out of that?
Sure. I think the first opportunity are things like this. The opportunity to speak to a wider audience than perhaps I would normally have going around community centres, particularly into the tech community. I mentioned our volunteers. So all of our clubs are delivered by at least 2 industry volunteers for safeguarding reasons. But that means we have a huge requirement for volunteers to give up an hour of their time each week to run those clubs. I know with Geiston, we've got a couple of your folks coming on board and supporting the clubs, but that's an opportunity for them to develop themselves professionally with some of those other skills that maybe they haven't had the opportunity to do in their workplace, team building, leadership, that kind of stuff. But also to showcase to the wider industry, this is a way in which you can give back with relatively low investment on your side. It's an hour a week, but you get to see the real tangible development of those young people over time. You get to meet other people from your industry in a slightly different context. So you can talk a bit about outside that sort of pressurized speed networking that sometimes we go to that's, fantastic, but really draining, I find. So this is a good way to give back to the community, develop your skills, and also see the next generation plus one come through and the kinds of opportunities and challenges that they face.
Yeah. And it's obviously one of the really big things that DigiLocal sort of focused on is around reaching people from disadvantaged backgrounds. And as an organisation at Geiston, we're very passionate about equity, diversity, and inclusion. It's particularly one of Emily's passions and things. Emily, my wife, co-founder, and so that's a big kind of driver for us. As an organisation and as a sector, we tend to focus quite a lot on diversity, which is much more kind of visible and easier to measure and manage. So gender diversity always kind of comes out top as kind of the most important one to deal with, or the one that people deal with first. And it was International Women's Day last week, and it's obviously kind of a focus on lots of people's minds. But I think social and socioeconomic diversity and that sort of background is massively important and can lead to huge benefits for a team to have people from that sort of diverse experience. And it also is this enormous pool of untapped talent potentially that is being wasted sort of just nationally through lack of opportunity. So it's fantastic to see DigiLocal kind of attack that. And some people might be listening to this thinking that, well, primary school kids, that's you can do what you like with them, but it's not going to make any difference to the workplace because they're so far off it. But I'm sure you share my disagreement with that statement. So maybe you could kind of explain a little bit from your experience and what you've been seeing directly as to how that's not true and how important it is to kind of act at that primary age.
Yeah, so there's an increasing body of evidence that shows young people make their life choices earlier and earlier. And there's some evidence to suggest we should actually be working with them even younger than 8 years old, that by the time they get to 8, a lot of their preconceptions about where their life might lead are already formed or forming. So getting in at that age and showing them that this world of tech, coding, software, whatever, is an opportunity for them and a real opportunity for them is, I think, vital, because otherwise they simply discard it and they'll focus on the bits they've been told about. And when you go into places like Southmead, Lockleys, as well as the more classically deprived areas of Easton, Filton, Barton Hill and areas, those young people, a lot of them don't know this world exists. Their phone is a magic piece of glass that they just tap and stuff happens, videos appear, it's amazing. how does that happen? What's the sequence of actions that lead that to happen? When it doesn't work, it doesn't like me as SCADA. No, it's because somebody that hasn't figured out that you might press that combination and coded it in, or you've done something and it is, so they don't have any understanding of how technology works at quite a fundamental level. Introducing them to coding clubs and platforms like Scratch give them the opportunity to build up that understanding of logical sequencing. So if this happens, then that's going to happen. I want this to move across the screen. I can do it in one big jump, or I can do it in 100 little steps in a loop, and it will get there more smoothly. I need to go through this list. I could write out 100 if statements, or I could put it into a loop and iterate through the list. Those kinds of foundational skills help young people understand, first of all, what technology is doing when they get to use it in whatever role, but also to see that it's not magic. I can do this, and it will then respond to what I've done in a positive way, and I can control it rather than it can control me. So when they then come to make their subsequent choices about whether they do maths, physics, whatever the options are at school, they're aware of this as being a possible avenue for that and can look out for it. We take young people in at age 8, as long as they're enjoying themselves, as long as they're making some kind of progress, they're welcome to keep coming back to the clubs. So we now have young people at age 16, I don't think we've got any 18-year-olds, but certainly 14 to 16, who have been with us since age 8 and are now doing stuff in Python that I don't understand, which is perfect. They're also coming back and volunteering because they've got a very strong social ethic themselves. So they're giving back to their peers, their community, already at age 16. Those young people are only a couple of years away from the workplace. So for companies that are looking to recruit diversely, to give people equity within the organisation from whatever background they come with, being able to support organisations that can afford to spend 10 years developing someone is a way of ensuring that you are at least in the mindset or the consciousness, the awareness of those organisations and those young people. Because as I said, the volunteers that come in, it's not a sales pitch, but they talk about what they do at work. You know, when there's a quiet moment and the kids are all getting on with their projects, you have a chat with the other volunteer about what you do, what they do, and the kids are hearing this in the background, and sometimes they go, what's it? So they're starting to get some of that language. They're starting to understand who the companies are in the local landscape, what kind of things they do, what kind of different jobs it means to be a systems engineer or data admin or whatever. And then they will start to form those perceptions as to where they go. So yeah, companies can't invest 10 years in an 8-year-old who may go off and become a footballer, but they can support charities that will, and from that, the pool of talent from which you get to draw is so much wider. Because you know, things like International Women's Day, a lot of the work around Black and minority ethnics, is fantastic, but at the end of the day, you're only able to draw on the people who've been through that classical school, A-level, university, usually training. For young people that don't get that, they don't have access. So working with charities, we're able to broaden that pool that everybody's fishing in, but the companies that are engaging with the charities will have a much better mindset, much better work environment, all that bit about mission and values. You know, industry and charity have very different purposes, but a lot of the time we share the same values, and that's fantastic. So that alignment, when young people are looking for workplace employment, they will have that in the back of their mind increasingly, I think, are the values and the mission of the organisation they work for. It's not just a paycheck, it's a lot more about their identity.
Yeah, fascinating. Thank you. I mean, I think the way I think of it often is that you kind of have a pool of potential people in your industry, and when they're babies, that pulls everyone.
Yep.
and I kind of visualize that pool shrinking as the years go by, and people kind of opt out of it and kind of lose enthusiasm or exposure to any of the right things, and it feels like socioeconomic background is one of the things that causes people to drop out of that pool faster than people otherwise would.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that really annoys me particularly about that is oftentimes it's not the young people dropping out of the pool, it's some of the actors within the pool kicking them out. You know, oh, that's not for you. car mechanics are over there, or hairdressing's over there, or whatever it happens to be. And I had a fantastic conversation with the head of ICT teaching at a college, and his daughter had been told, "Oh no, computing's not for girls."
Wow.
And he was obviously spitting bullets as the head for the college, but that still happens. And I think that's what annoys me, and that's where I think if we can keep that opportunity open, the young people may make the decision, I want to go be a hairdresser, fantastic, people need haircuts. But equally, they have the opportunity to say, actually, I quite enjoy this stuff over here. And if the education system is not configured to do that, and that's a whole different podcast, then organisations like DigiLocal hopefully are around to do that.
Yeah. I think I would have some very serious words to say to anyone who told my daughter that computing's not for girls.
And I'm sure she would also, having met your daughter.
Hopefully, yes, she would. She would also answer back in a very authoritative tone. But that's that's a place of privilege, I guess. That's,
absolutely.
There's a lot of young people out there who don't have that confidence and who don't have that pre-exposure to all the things that my daughter would have had exposure to. So vitally important. So we've talked a bit about kind of where DigiLocal's come from and the stuff you have been doing, but let's look forward a little bit to this year, and obviously the best year for DigiLocal because you have Geiston's support.
Well, yes, it's turned out well so far.
What are the upcoming highlights for the year?
So I think one of the big ones will be our internship model, where we will be bringing a team of young people from across the DigiLocal clubs together to work on a client project as a team of developers with support from industry, and Geiston very kindly offered some of that support to give them an experience of working to a client's brief. So they will have experience of working in Python on a range of projects themselves, usually independently, and usually against something that myself or one of the other volunteers has specified, and with a guide to follow. This will be unscripted, there will be a problem to solve, they will have 6 weeks over the summer holidays where they will work as paid employees of DigiLocal to deliver a project at the end. We piloted this with a couple of young people over previous years, with a mix of constructed and actual briefs, and I was blown away by the quality and depth that those young people were able to go into with relatively limited support, because I was really the only one helping them, and I'm not a professional developer. But they did background research, they came up with code, they found different solutions online, they did different testing. We had kind of an agile thing going on, so they would sit down on a Monday, come up with some activities, work them through, do again on Wednesday, blah, blah, blah. And at the end of it, we had 2 working prototype models, one for each of the young people, which gave me the confidence to say, actually, if we get a team of these together, we could probably do some quite interesting stuff with real company challenges. Obviously, they're not going near production data, but as a piloting experimental, what could we do with, this I think is a really interesting way of companies doing a little bit of CSR and supporting what we do as the next part of that pathway, and potentially get some interesting results out, but also, again, getting that forward view on who's going to be hitting the workplace in a couple of years' time, because they'll be 14 to 16, so they will be looking at their work options going forward. So that's probably the big one.
Okay, and I understand that you're looking for the problems to solve at the moment.
We have some opportunities for clients that would like to engage DigiLocal with those pilot prototype challenges where maybe they've got a to-do list and this is near the bottom of something they're interested in, they haven't done it, they'd like a bit of experimentation done over 6 weeks. That's kind of who we're looking for.
So if anyone listening either has such a problem and an opportunity or knows someone who might, then
please get in touch.
Get in touch with you. Yeah, absolutely.
So that's probably the biggest thing going on, new activity going on. Our clubs are still running, so we have 12 in-person clubs each week around Bristol. We're always looking to launch new ones, and we've got 3 or 4 of those potentially coming up over the new year. So that's the sort of continued organic growth of DigiLocal within the Bristol region.
And again, if anyone's interested in volunteering to help run those clubs,
please get in touch.
Get in touch.
We look after the safeguarding for you. We have project guides for them to follow. We will help find venues if there isn't one near you. If you can find a colleague to come along, That gives you the 2 for safeguarding. Bish bash bosh, off we go. We do the registration, the waiting list, communication with parents. So you just turn up for an hour a week, have a great time with the kids, pack everything away, come back next week.
Yeah, and having run code clubs myself back in the early days of Geistin, I can thoroughly recommend. It's really rewarding activity to put yourself into.
It's great fun, and there is good evidence that says it does help with your personal satisfaction. It can help with career building. I did a whole 2-hour session with Coding Black Females on using volunteering to further your career. So there's lots of stuff there. So that's going on. Then just after summer, we will drop into the start of the NASA Space App Challenge. So this is an annual global challenge across the globe for engineers, scientists, data wonks, to play around with space data over 2 days at the start of October, first weekend in October, set by NASA. There's usually a dozen to 20 challenges that they set in partnership with the other 13 national space agencies. And we get together in Bristol. DigiLocal is the local lead, to be confirmed. We have been in the past, we are applying, not yet confirmed, should be, just to clarify. We will then get together with folks from industry, our volunteers and our young people. And this is a repeat of the success we had last year where our young team won. So you're going to be up against it with the young people. They are furiously curious and come at things from very different angles, which is a great way of solving new problems. So that's an opportunity for industry to take part as a team, to come along as a volunteer if you want to try it out for a weekend. We'll have our safeguarding volunteers there, so you can join a team and you've got the cover there, but you can also help them out with technical support. Or say, form your own team and come along as an industry team and put yourselves up against the kids.
Great. Sounds like an exciting year. You do a Secret Santa thing around Christmas time.
We do. Yeah.
Right?
So that was a volunteer suggestion. A couple of years ago, one of our volunteers said, why don't we do this Secret Santa thing? How would that work in code? And we had a bit of a thing. So each year, we ask the young people to fill out a simple form online saying what genre, objective and location they would like for a game for Christmas. So it might be a puzzle game underwater where you have to collect all the things. That then goes into a big spreadsheet. I jumble it all up. We then issue those challenges to everybody in the Secret Santa in the classic Secret Santa method. So they then get a brief that somebody in DigiLocal would like a game that does these things. They then have 3 weeks to build that game, submit it back. I unjumble the spreadsheet, and then the week before Christmas, they get their game made by somebody else in DigiLocal as an early Christmas present.
Right. You mean Santa unjumbles?
Santa unjumbles. Sorry, absolutely. Yeah. Santa unjumbles it. He's got a big database up in the North Pole, all AWS cool. So they get their code, and it's a really fun thing because it's you're making it for somebody else, and for a lot of them, it will be the first time they've had to make a game for somebody else. So they go, oh, I'll make a Five Nights at Freddy's or a Undertale or whatever. But hang on, that's what you enjoy. What would the other person enjoy? Oh, okay, I hadn't thought about that. Oh, maybe I could do this and that. And off they go. So it's a really good opportunity to develop them as critical thinkers, problem solvers, but also beyond their own interests, what are other people interested in? And it's good fun for everyone.
Yeah, what a wonderful idea. Great. So a big question to finish on, John. So obviously the last couple of years, AI has really exploded, and we as a company here at Geistin are using it every day to help write code. So it's definitely impacted this world of technology and how we create it. Yeah. How do you see it impacting what you're doing and kind of what the young people are doing and what they need to do?
I think the direct impact is probably minimal because we're not about to start throwing them in front of ChatGPT or other large language models or whatever. We do actually have 2 projects in Python that use machine learning. They are quite late on. I think for me, it underlines is the need for some of those fundamental foundational skills to be able to present a coherently formed challenge or question or prompt, I think they call it, a coherently formed prompt to the AI to be able to do something with. And then critically recognize when the response that comes back makes any sense. And I relate it back to my engineering education, where yes, you would use lots of mathematical tools to do the complicated calculations, but you had to recognize if the answer it gave out was, I need an aircraft that's going to weigh 10,000 tons, or I need a piece of metal that's going to weigh 10,000 milligrams. It's recognizing when it gives you a stupid answer is more important, I think, than knowing exactly how it's programmed. But in order to do that, you need to have the foundation skills. So knowing about those concepts of conditional logic, if-then loops, enable you to realize what's going on behind the scenes a little bit, enough to know when you're getting a nonsensical answer. And then you can then construct your query using, if this does this, then it should do that. The ChatGPT or whatever it is, Copilot, can go away and construct the code behind it, and it's pulling on millions of lines of code, so it's probably going to produce something better than you could do if it's prompted accurately. So if you construct your prompt to say, write my code to be as memory efficient as possible, you'll get a different answer than if you say it needs to be as fast as possible, or as scalable as possible, or other phrases. But unless you know about those things, you're just going to say, write me a game to do this. And it will do that, but it might be horribly optimized.
Yeah.
So I think for the young people, learning about those things will hold them in any career they go into. And if they come into the tech industry, they will be better equipped than somebody who's maybe just done a crash course in full stack development, because they won't understand, they won't have that language background of technology to be able to think, not think like a computer, but understand how a computer thinks, so they can present their prompts in a way that will give them the output they expect. When we're doing that problem solving with Scratch, simple platform, the first thing is always, is it behaving as you expected? Is it doing something unexpected? What should it be doing? And being able to recognize, well, I wanted it to do this and it's doing that. Okay, well, how do I get from there to there? It's the same problem in writing code using an AI coder. I've asked it to do this, it's produced that. Does that do what? No, it doesn't. Why doesn't it do that? Okay, well, yeah. And then you start going into it, and that's when your personal skill comes in. And a lot of that detailed training companies do themselves, I'm sure anyway. If somebody comes to you with a qualification, there's an onboarding training process in your particular tools and stack and method of working. So that can be done by industry. What I think industry want are those problem solvers who can, first of all, interpret a brief and come up with a sensible question, and then look at the response and figure out whether it's a sensible response. And if you can close that loop, then I think that puts you in quite a powerful position going forward, because, as you say, AI is everywhere. It's only going to get more so, but the less we understand about how it works, the more likely we are to fall into the pitfalls of writing code that is unintentionally biased or incorrect.
Yeah, I think that's so. It all comes back to the sort of generative AI as a tool, and we need to learn to use those tools. We've had calculators for a very long time, but we still teach kids how to do addition and subtraction and multiplication.
Exactly.
Because if you don't understand the fundamental concepts, you can't really use the tools very effectively.
And all those tools build on those simple addition, subtraction, and or gates effectively. It's just they get more and more complicated. We don't ask young people to build an x80 chip from scratch, but we do ask them to understand how it's being interpreted, how those problems can be broken down, how you can build those problems back up. And you then either hard code those yourself in Python, or you work with a coding AI to work with you and do some of the legwork for you. And computers are really good at doing legwork. They're not always that great at problem solving.
Yeah. And fascinating that some of your young people get on to actually doing some ML stuff as well, because it's very easy for us to forget that the world of AI is much bigger than the world of generative AI. And and actually those skills in that sort of piece are really relevant.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Amazing. Thanks so much for joining us, John.
Thank you again for the invitation.
It's been really great to have you on board. Again, I'm super thrilled that you're our partner of the year, our mission partner of the year. Looking forward to the year ahead and everything that it might bring.
Well, thank you again. It's great to be partner. I think it's important for charities that aim to work with or support ultimately industry to actually work with industry and not work in our own little bubble. It's very easy to work in your own little bubble. So getting out every now and again is fantastic. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thanks very much.